Welcome to Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation possible. You will get to hear from CSIA system integrators and industry partners to get a better understanding of how they help their clients solve process challenges and how they've earned success in their careers. Along the way, we will touch on system integration best practices, technology, trends, and challenges. Whether you are a manufacturer, end user, supplier, or system integrator, you will enjoy the insights these industry professionals bring to this podcast. Let's get started. Hi, my name is Lisa Richter, the host of Talking Industrial Automation, a podcast where you get to know the people who make modern industrial automation and processing possible. In today's episode, we're talking industrial automation with Tor-Inge Eriksen, who is CTO of Clarify, based in Norway. With an interest in the intersection between people, software, and the physical world, Tor started as a consultant where he worked on a lot of interesting projects in agriculture, healthcare, aquaculture, shipping, and manufacturing. He soon realized that the knowledge of people in the field was underused and decided to commit to building a software as a service product with his co-founders that combines human context and industrial data for daily decisions. Thus, Clarify was born. In his role as CTO, his main responsibility is to be really attentive to both the customers and the market at large to make sure Clarify is evolving the product and company in the right direction, and to lead his team as they listen, learn, and ship a great product that users love to use. Tor, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Let's start with how you describe to lay people what you do.
As you mentioned in the intro, I'm CTO at Clarify. How I like to think about it is that I help shape the product that we build on a fairly high level. So day-to-day decisions, we have a lot of great people in our team who work on the design and the development and just really making sure that the technical aspect gets right. But I think what I can contribute is bringing my experience in the field and having worked in industrial automation before working on this product and just helping our team and us as a company to really make sure we're building a product that makes sense for people, that provides real value to the end customers. And so at the stage where we're at now, really, we've been building this product for some years with a lot of our pilot customers and working really closely with customers. And now we're scaling the business and working with new people. I think what's needed of me is to be very, very customer centric. So I'll join in on sales calls. I talk with our customers very regularly and just spend a lot of my time really listening and trying to understand what the market looks like.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of how the company began. And I mean, you guys are just sitting around having a beer and somebody was like, hey, you know what we need? And boom, it was born. And give us the story.
Sure. So I actually started a different company. So it's the same company, but we did a very different thing when we first started. So we started out as consultants, didn't quite know exactly like what idea we'd want to work with. So we thought we'd spend some time just really getting to know the industry. And being a consultant gives you a chance, at least that was our impression, we would get a chance to just look into other people's problems in a lot of detail. And so we spent about, I'd say, a good 5 years doing that and working on very different projects and just really trying to see if there was some kind of common thread throughout all the work we were doing. And so about 5 years ago, we gradually wound down the contracts that we had for consulting contracts and started building an organization that would be this product company. Since then, we've added 21 full-time employees. One of the things I'm most happy about is the team we've built, which I think is just a group of really extraordinary people. We went from being a consultancy to becoming a product company. It's been an interesting journey for sure.
So tell me a little bit about your co-founders. Was it 2 guys, 3 guys, 10 guys? Talk to me about that.
So there were 4 of us. We met while studying. So 3 of us come from a field called engineering cybernetics, but we specialized in different areas. So I think we speak a common language, but we have actually quite different areas that we're most interested in and most focused on. And then we were very lucky to have a 4th guy coming in from product development, actually joining us as the 4th co-founder, which I think has brought a lot of strength to our focus on the actual end customers. It's easy for engineers to get really, really interested in technology and forget that we're actually, what we're doing is providing providing a service and value to the end customer. I think having that from the very beginning has strengthened our company and the product that we build. And we're in this area where we're working both with end customers, so the guys in the field using our product, but we also need to be able to talk to and have a product that works great for system integrators who are actually really relying on to bring data and to bridge this to find good cases for customers and to make the data work.
Before we started recording, you mentioned to me that your company has employees that speak was it 9 different languages?
Yeah, we have 9 nationalities in the company right now, which means that there's some Norwegians in the company, but we also have people from a lot of different areas. And we've built this, what I think is a really diverse team from different backgrounds, different areas of the world with different experiences. I think that this also is a great strength as we're trying to scale out of a tiny country, not exactly the center of the world, but we really want to be a global company, an international company right from the get-go, because we think the same kind of data problems and the same kind of team dynamics, basically the same kind of problems occur in a lot of different industries and a lot of different places in the world. And no good reason for us to sit in Norway alone and work on Clarify.
Well, it's interesting because people talk all the time about diversity and we have to have diverse companies, blah, blah, blah. You're actually doing it, right? So I applaud you for that. So let's talk a little bit about the software itself. What's unique about the software?
As I said in the beginning, how we started was as consultants. And Clarify is very much born out of the experience that we had working in industrial automation ourselves. And so the problem that we latched onto was this: we were asked so many times to basically get data out of various systems. So in our field, that's very often time series data, so graphs and charts. And we'd read data from different machines, different software systems, and just getting it out there. You often spend an inordinate amount of time doing that, which means less time to actually analyze that data and use it in your daily decisions. The other part we saw was that in a lot of cases, you extract data and you work on it alone. You might take a screenshot, maybe you'll draw an arrow on it and email it to your colleague, but none of the tools were really built for teams to work on this together. And we think there's a lot of value in having people with different backgrounds in different domains inside of a business being able to work together. And with Clarify, what we're trying to do is just bring data and people and have it be accessible so that anyone in an organization who has access to the data can go in and ask a colleague, hey, can you chime in here? I've seen this spike. What was this about? And you can add pictures and text and videos and documents. You just add all this context. And there's a lot of talk about data, and data, I think, truly has great value, but not by itself. You can't just gather a ton of data and automatically have some value provided. You really need to work with it. And I think that human context is a huge part of that.
Tell me a little bit more about how Clarify has grown and changed in the past year, and what are your expectations for the company in the next 12 to 24 months?
We've basically been concentrating on the Norwegian market. It's just been it's accessible to us. It's easy for us to be able to travel out, and we like to be very close with our partners and really to understand the problems. So we've spent a lot of time working very, very closely with our customers to make sure that the core of the product makes sense. And so in past years, that's where our focus has been. And then the last year, we've shifted gears and said, okay, we have a strong core at the company, and now there's time for us to go out with it. And so the last year, we've spent time working on our self-service model and also spending time with system integrators to build out a partner program that provides value to the system integrator and that enables them to provide value to the end customer. For the coming years, so the next year or two, I'd say product-wise, we are working with more ways of visualizing data. And so we're trying to be very attentive to our customers. And so what we're doing is basically gathering feedback. We're looking at how they're using the product, where they're getting value, where their journey in Clarify ends, where they might have wanted to do one more thing or add in one more data source or do things a bit differently. And we try to choose strategically where we develop the product so that it's really a complete product for our customers. So that means, as I said, more ways of visualizing data. It also means more ways of interacting with the data and with each other. So adding that human context. Are there other kinds of context we could be adding? Are there other methods of adding it? Or in bringing in colleagues, are there other ways where teams can work with data together? So we're trying to stay true to the core of the products. I don't want this sprawling product that's trying to be a bit of everything. We'd rather build something really, really strong in the areas where we have our strengths. But we're improving those. And the final part, I'd say on the product side, is we're constantly looking at ways we can make it easier to integrate data into Clarify. And that's something where we're working very closely with our system integrator partners to make sure that's possible. And then for the company side, we are really looking towards going towards the, say, SMB market internationally. So we're working with finding good system integrators in key areas and key industries in order to help us expand globally.
Hi, Jose.
Hi, Lisa.
Hey, you want to play a game?
Not this again.
What? You're good at this.
Fine. What is it this time?
It's 2 truths and a lie, sort of. I'm going to give you 3 statements. You tell me which one is not a Peter Drucker quote. Here we go. 1, the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is to act with yesterday's logic. 2, great vision without great people is irrelevant. 3, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Which one of those is not Peter Drucker?
Well, I know that culture eats strategy for breakfast is a Peter Drucker, so I will have to guess between 1 and 2. And I'll say that the one that is not a Peter Drucker is the first one. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it is to act with yesterday's logic.
Wah, wah, wah. I'm sorry, that wasn't the right answer. The quote that is not Drucker is number 2. Great vision without great people is irrelevant. Jim Collins actually said that in one of his Good to Great books.
Well, that's all great advice. But you know where else business owners and their teams can get great advice? The CSIA Executive Conference.
I see what you did there.
Well, it's true. The whole conference agenda is built around the theme, the future of work. We've lined up keynote speakers and panel presentations to help system integrators navigate the business environment in a post-pandemic world.
What about that one that everybody likes? Lessons from touching a hot stove. Will that be back?
Of course. What makes CSIA in this event so special is how our community is very open and willing to help others by sharing their experiences, even their mistakes, and how they resolve them. It's actually quite unusual.
Sounds like this is a must-attend event. Where can people go to get more information?
All the details are available on www.controlsys.org/conference 2022. Hope to see you all there.
See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Well, but let's do this. Can I ask the questions next time?
Well, you literally are the boss, so... If I was somebody who was interested in working with you and I was in the United States, one of my concerns might be, gosh, the time difference. If I have a problem and I need support, they're all going to be asleep or eating dinner and I don't want to bother them. So how do you address that concern?
This is actually one of the areas where the reason we're working with system integrators. So one of the things that we found when we're going out to end customers is that when you find end customer and you find this problem you want to work on, the very first person, the very first company you often need to call is their system integrator. They're often the key to getting data. They often have a very good understanding of the customer's problems, their capabilities. And I think how we're seeing expanding, as I said, like we're in Norway and we want to expand outside. And what we've done, I think, with great effect so far is to work closely in having system integrators being a contact point to customers and being able to help customers. So that as a factory owner in the States, you're still talking to your system integrator who you know and have relationships with. And that helps us being able to provide a lot more assistance to the system integrator. So we can, instead of being spread thinly, we can actually go really deep on the problems that our system integrators have. In this world, especially after COVID, I think a lot of companies have really opened their eyes to remote work. And we have people who've spent time working remotely a lot of places in the world. And over time, building the company, we're absolutely building out capabilities for us as a company as well in different time zones in order to handle. I think that's natural as you grow. I'd say the collaboration with system integrators is actually a key part in us delivering really good quality of service to our customers in many different parts of the world.
What's the smartest decision your company has made recently?
So I think the one thing and this comes really from our work with system integrators that I'm really happy about, is we've added support for MQTT. So I guess a lot of the listeners to this will be familiar with it, but for those who aren't, it's a protocol basically that's seen great adoption in the industrial space for sending data between things. And some of our key system integrator partners come to us and say it would make our life so much easier if you guys would just natively support MQTT. Now, in the past, we've had ways to get data from MQTT into Clarify, but it's required a bit of setup. And so what we've done is basically to work with them to see, okay, how can we make it so that if your equipment speaks MQTT, how can we have that inside of Clarify in the shortest amount of time possible? We want to help people spend time in the right places, and integration work is necessary, but it's not perhaps where you gain the most value. Like, we all want to move on and start going into analysis and working with the data. And so one decision I'm very happy about. The other one is actually I can mention one more. It's our work on providing a free plan for our self-service tool. So we're building this product that we want to be super intuitive and easy to use and easy to get started with. And I think a good way of testing that out is to be able to try our product. In our work with the free plan, we've just tried to see, okay, how many hurdles can we clear? Can we take away? Do we really need you to put in a credit card to try out the free plan? Well, maybe no. Does it have to be time limited? Like, we just try to shave off all the reasons why you might stop and say, okay, we all have busy days. We have tons of projects going on. We don't want to spend time learning this thing. So getting a free plan when we've had pilots now and system integrators who we're just starting out working with, it's a really easy way for them, almost no commitment, or actually no commitment, except for the time you spend on it. And we're really trying to just make sure that people can test it out and see that what we say on the packaging is actually what the product looks like, and give them a chance to try it out themselves.
I think people are just getting more and more used to like a frictionless experience. I think like Apple and iPhones and all that, they want to just make it so just dummy proof it. And I think that's a trend that we're going to continue to see. So I think you're on the right track there with your approach to that. So tell me about a project that was challenging and what you did to solve the customer's problem.
Sure. So we had a system integrator come to us with a project that was a bit of a tricky project to get started. So this end customer wanted a setup where they would log time series data and their team would be able to go in and see it. Now, the problem was this isn't for something that they do in their day-to-day business. It's a research and development project that had quite a limited budget and also a time constraint. So they didn't want to invest a ton of resources in getting it up. They didn't quite have the infrastructure in place already to handle it. And so the system integrator was tasked with finding a solution that could be delivered in a very short amount of time and at a very low cost. And it's typically not a good combination to be looking for. So we went through the project with them. It's one of the projects I'm most happy about. It's not a giant project. It's actually quite a small project, but one of the strengths of Clarify is the ability of us to bring in these pilots. So we had them basically from talking with the system integrator to the customer being able to look at their time series data on their phones in half a day. It came in at about 10% of the price they already had been quoted by another provider. And it's using MQTT, which we haven't fully launched publicly, but we've been testing with some select partners for about the last 2 months. We recently saw this pilot project scale. So it's doubled in size and it's going to increase 5 times size in the next couple of months. So I think also a good strength of Clarify is the ability to come in at the floor, very low cost, very short amount of time required to get it up and running. And then once you're in, you can scale and you can do it on yourself. And with our pricing structure, it's very transparent. There's no gotchas at the end of it. You can actually see right at the beginning, what is this going to cost me as I scale, which I think feels good to the customer to know that you're not getting tied at the end.
Well, okay, so we have a statement here in the States that says, if it sounds too good to be true, there is something there. So tell me how you can do this inexpensively and at quality and quickly. What's the secret sauce?
Excellent question. We got the same saying in Norway, and I think it's generally true. I think we have a pretty uncomplicated business model. We charge for the product that we sell. So when you buy Clarify, you are paying for the users who have access to your data and the data that you send to us. Technology-wise, we've built this architecture where we realize that there are many different requirements for how fast data needs to load, how accessible it needs to be based on how people are using it. So a common occurrence is that you're sending in a lot more data that you want to look at. And what we wanted to do was to prevent people from having to make too much of a decision. Am I going to send this one extra signal? Is that going to cost me? So we wanted to provide a solution where you can send in a lot of data. And when you're just sending it, it's actually quite cheap for us to store it and keep it, and then clarify as you start to use data, as you start to visualize it, like the system automatically understands the usage patterns and loads the data into faster, more accessible storages. And with this architecture, we've been able to provide the service where you can actually write in a lot of data, but you only end up paying basically for the stuff that provides value for you as a business. And then we encourage people to use data, but we also understand that a lot of times you might want to log more data than you need to look at. And in systems where you're sending thousands, or for some of our customers, tens of thousands of various time series individual signals, it's unlikely that you're going to be looking at all 10,000 at the same time, at least. So a lot of engineering has gone into making it possible, but I do think it's something that a lot of our customers really value about the product.
What advice would you give to a prospective customer researching you versus a competitor?
One of the key areas to succeeding in projects, or at least one of the things where we've seen a lot of projects fail, is that you build this giant project where the value lies far in the future. And whenever we have this where we need to make investments over time, often quite big ones, and then value is going to come a year from now, 18 months from now, what can often happen in an organization is that priorities shift, strategy changes, people change. And so you end up somewhere along the road in losing interest, or priorities just shift in a way where you aren't able to get to that point. So I think a lot of times it's good to have that long-term strategy, but it's also crucial to find areas where the organization can succeed on a much shorter timescale. I think it's important, not just in terms of like monetary value, but for the people who are doing this every day. If you're entering data into a system every day or opening some screen every day, you as a person need to get something out of it. And I think just focusing on finding those wins, those ways to provide value very early on is key in getting your organization to stick with it, to move through this. And we're providing a software product. And so obviously we think technology has a part of it, but in a lot of cases, it really is an organizational, not problem perhaps, but it's an organizational task to succeed in becoming data-driven, in becoming an organization who responds to data and who uses data actively in making decisions. And so I think keeping everyone motivated and keeping incentives aligned throughout that process requires us to provide value early on. And I think that's something that a lot of projects would gain from thinking of early on in the project.
You touched on the SI partner program that you're building. Tell me a little bit more about it, though.
As I said earlier, we basically identified that we think system integrators are really key for us to be able to deliver value for the end customer. And so our partners, we provide support and instructions on how to use Clarify. We work with them to build new integrations, to find solutions. Basically, our engineers can work with the system integrator to find solutions where the system integrator might not have software development capabilities internally, or might not know exactly how to be able to solve a problem. And there we can often step in and help guide them through that process. System integrators, I think, are good at seeing the value that could be gained from getting data, and using Clarify gives them a way to show that to a customer. So let's say you're working with an IoT gateway. Without the visualization software, rationally, we can all kind of deduce that, okay, we need this gateway in order to move data from A to B. But if no one sees the data, neither at A nor B, then it's hard for the end customer to remember, well, why are we making these investments? Why are we bringing these gateways into our system and extracting data? And what Clarify gives you is a tool very quickly and in a visual way. You can start to work with that data. You can gain visibility into it. And I think that really strengthens the argument for system integrators in integrating more data, and also gives them ways of showcasing to the customer why it has value. And for the end customer, I think looking at your data on a regular basis really helps improve the data quality. It's easy to have data going into some bucket. No one's looking at it. And if a sensor stops sending data or sends the wrong data, If no one's looking at it, no one's going to see it. And for some of our system integrators who provide more long-term ongoing relationships with customer, we've had some of them who are using Clarify as a way to communicate with their customer. So they're doing support requests, they are doing remote maintenance of systems and debugging things where otherwise you might have needed to send an engineer out in the field, or you might have needed to install logging equipment, data loggers, and then try to fix the problem afterwards. And we've had some of them really use Clarify to great effect to help customers out in a much shorter time span.
With thousands of qualified integrators and suppliers, the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is your one-stop spot to identify and connect with a diverse community of integrators and suppliers to help you deliver a low-risk and successful project. Using this powerful platform, you can do customized searches and filter by industry vertical, expertise, location, certifications, and more to source the right partners and products for your needs. For SIs and partners, it provides a platform to support your content and SEO marketing efforts, position yourself as a thought leader, and nurture prospects during their complicated buyer's journey. Why not take a minute to visit www.csiaexchange.com and see for yourself? No swiping left, no swiping right. Just connect directly to quality industry experts. It's really that simple, I promise. What trends are you seeing in industrial automation right now?
I think the things that we've been seeing the last couple of years and that's really picking up now is companies are getting a lot more conscious about ownership of data. So just getting that out of the way, in Clarify, we really think that customers' data is customers' data. And what that means is that customers pay us to store their data. It's not ours. So whatever data you put into Clarify, you can also extract from Clarify. So if a customer sends us a year's worth of sensor data, well, they can read out that sensor data and we don't aggregate it for them unless they want to. We don't do anything with it so that what they get out is different from what they sent in. For example, in Clarify, you can add these calculations where you might take two individual time series and create some kind of formula that modifies the two and creates a third time series that does something special. Once you've done that in Clarify and you can visualize it in Clarify, you can also export it from Clarify. So if you want to use that in some third-party tool, we're not going to stop you. Actually, we encourage it. We think we want to be really good at what we do. And there's a lot of space for other products and other companies to be really good at other areas of it. So we'd rather work well with other products. Don't know how common this is now. I mean, it seems to be less and less common, but I know when I used to work in industrial automation, we'd meet manufacturers where you can't even get data. Well, you bought this piece of machinery. If you want the data coming from it, you have to pay extra. And I'm not a fan of it. And I can tell that our customers really aren't as well. So the other one is there's a lot of focus on how to get data out of systems, machines in general, a lot more interest in data. And I think the manufacturers and the products that make it very easy to get data out of the sensors and really work to make the data pipelining work easier are the ones who's succeeding, at least as far as we can tell. In general, just so much more focus on data. And with that comes a ton of new problems. How do you organize great amounts of data? Who does it? Where is it stored? When you're getting data from multiple manufacturers, how do you standardize the data and where so that we're able to say that a temperature from one piece of machine, we can compare against another machine? What if they're coming from two different manufacturers? What if they're labeled differently? And I think there's just a lot more focus and some really interesting products and companies springing up that are trying to solve this. And I think Clarify has a role to play in that. But I also think that we as a company really see our future in working together with some key players in the industry rather than trying to be a full solution in every aspect of it.
In your opinion, what's the biggest challenge facing the automation marketplace today and in the future?
So that's an excellent question. I think the first one I'd like to point to is that there's this gap between automation often happening in PLCs. You need a lot of control. You need to be sure that things are working the way that you want them to work. I mean, it's often critical. These are machines and things that are spinning, and there's lots of ways things can go wrong. And then on the other hand, you have the software world, programming, and there's high speed and Facebook mentality of move fast and break things. And I think these things really collide into each other. Both technologically, but also in organizations. These are two very different backgrounds and two different kinds of teams. I think finding ways where you can have that security and certainty that things will keep working the way you want it on the automation side, while maybe there's something to be gained from being able to adopt some of the speed and just raw innovation happening on the programming side. And maybe there's a bit of learning to be had the other way as well. And just finding a good way for this to work, because I think as automation wants to move upwards, as you want to integrate automation systems with resource planning or your factory management systems, I think we need to find a way where these aren't two competing teams that butting heads, but rather find good ways of working together. And there's probably compromises to be made on both sides to make that happen. But I think it's a key thing that we need to find ways to solve. At the core of that is basically balancing security with innovation and speed, and finding a good way to happen. And finally, the tying on into all of this is digitalization. As an industry, we often talk about these very high level concepts, and we have these great visions for the future. And I think that's very important to have a strategy and to have a vision of the future, where we want to be moving. I think where it collides is when we're selling these giant visions and it doesn't speak to the people who are working day to day with this, because it's so far removed from what they're doing. So we're talking about this AI coming in and controlling everything, and they can't even get a time series out of their machine. When they leave the factory, if they want to check if the CNC machine stopped, they can't. And I think when these two things collide, it's very easy for people to get basically demotivated. You feel like leaderships and the salespeople and the vision of it is just so far removed from your day-to-day problems, which is just, well, I just need to get data out of this machine, or I just want to see this thing, or I just want to build this tiny solution. So I think we can all do well to be a bit more real, to talk about the actual problems that people are facing, and understanding that, sure, we need to be moving towards this greater vision, but we have to be able to bring it down into, well, what do we do next Monday? When we get to work next Monday, how do we become a bit more data-driven? How do we build upon it? And I think we need to think of it as layers. We need to solve each one of them. And I think we'd all do well to talk a bit more about the lower layer of this stack and explaining how they will help us get to that bigger picture.
Switching gears a little bit, let's talk about me. What would you say is the biggest benefit of CSA membership for your company?
We think it's a really good way for us to just be part of a professional network. And so, as I keep saying, system integrators is so key to our strategy as a company. So we thought it was a really natural fit for us to join. And we're very much looking forward into working with more system integrators and just finding an organization where there's a group of, I'll say, motivated and people who are interested in finding good ways of working together and who are at the top of their game is such a key part of our strategy. When we discovered CSI, it was more or less a instant recognition that this is something that we need to be a part of.
From a supplier perspective, how should a customer go about choosing a system integrator?
A bit tongue-in-cheek, we say, like, find a system integrator that isn't stuck in the 80s. But to be more specific, there are some really good system integrators out there. And in some industries, there are system integrators who are, both because of the technology and customer requirements, there might be good reasons why we are sticking with solutions that have been proven to work. And that's a good instinct to have, that we don't jump on every new hype, every new buzzword. We don't jump on everything. I think that that's a good instinct to have. But we also need the ability to change and adapt and move forward. There are some integrators more than others who are willing to do that and who have a mindset that they want to try out new things. And again, it's not about jumping on every new hype, but I do think things are happening. Things are becoming better. There are new innovative solutions coming out over the years. And I think there are some system integrators who just have the internal skill set, the knowledge to be able to gain value from that and to adapt to that. And I think finding a system integrator who is in the know of things that are coming out and who understands the landscape, not of what's available today, but also understands where are we heading. There's a key to making sure that your factory is, when delivered, is ready for the next, because oftentimes this equipment will be installed for a long, long time. So it needs to stand the test of time. And I think it's a good thing not to start with something who has stood the test of time for the last 25 years, because that might be a bit late for the next 25. So yeah, there's some tension there in finding someone who isn't jumping on AI, machine learning, blockchain. There are a ton of things, and some of this will provide real value, and some of it might not be ready for prime time. And finding someone who's able to see those things and understand, okay, which one of these makes sense for this customer, I think is key.
So this next question, I don't know if you're going to want to answer it, but was there a mistake that you've made in your career? What was it, and what did you learn from it?
I'd actually love to answer that, because I think it is important to be able to talk about the things that not to be too self-critical, but just to be able to reflect on the choices we've made and where there are times where we wish we'd made other choices. So I've spent a bit of time thinking as I've transitioned. So as a consultant, I used to work as basically an individual contributor. I had myself to worry about, and I would do things. And as we gradually became a product company, our team grew, and the amount of people that I work with kept growing. I think one thing that I've reflected on lately is that it took me way longer than it should have to realize that I have to stop being involved in everything. So when I put my focus and attention on the nitty-gritty details of every project, what that means is I'm not paying attention to the bigger picture. I get dragged down into the details. And someone has to do that. Someone has to do that, because day-to-day operations is a lot of nitty-gritty decisions. But someone also needs to be on deck and looking forward and understanding that where are we heading, so that we're making sure that we're moving in the right direction. And it took me a while to realize, and it took me a while to shift my priorities to being of assistance to my team and trusting them to make the right decisions, and shifting focus from the detail level to more of a high level, and finding ways where I'm able to translate what we see in the market, what we're getting from input from our customers and integrators, and translating that to information that's useful and valuable to our team, and working with our management to make sure that the company is moving in the right direction. It took me longer than it should have. I like to think that I've gotten to the right place now, but I guess asking my team is probably better.
I think that growing pain is so common for people who are moving up into leadership positions, because you got recognized and for all your attention to detail and for getting jobs done and being reliable. So that was where you got all your kudos from. But as you scale, what you're going to be measured on is different. So it's almost comforting to go back to what you knew and you got good rewards from, but pushing yourself to let go is definitely a common growing pain. So I understand that completely. I'm sure you absolutely love what you do, but if you had to choose another career, what would it be?
Before I became an engineer, I actually thought for the longest time that I wanted to be a pilot. So I keep telling my team that if I ever retire from this, I'm going to buy a seaplane and just fly around. I really love flying, which is good because I've had to travel quite a bit for work, and I would book these really elaborate routes. So I optimize for spending more time in planes, not less, when I'm traveling. So if I had to pick something else, I still think I'd like to become a pilot at some point.
It could still happen. Well, that's it for today's episode of Talking Industrial Automation. If you are interested in learning more about Tor or Clarify, you can find them on the CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange at www.csiaexchange.com. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Tor, for joining me today.
Thanks so much, Lisa, and thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also help others find us by leaving a 5-star review and sharing your favorite episodes with colleagues. Thanks for listening to the Talking Industrial Automation podcast. Thanks also to bensound.com and Wistia for the music bumpers. Until next time.